Hey everyone, welcome to Taqueando. I'm your host, Bill Esparza, and on this week's show, we have Chef Ray Garcia. Ray Garcia has been in restaurants for 31 years, and currently in LA, you can go to his restaurants Asterid. In Vegas, it's Viva and BS Taqueria. We miss that place. It used to be here in Los Angeles. Bring it back. And for me, the really his modern Chicano restaurant, I was the most Chicano, I think, of all the restaurants that were part of that movement was Broken Spanish, that opened in the old Rivera space in downtown. And of course, it was closed in the pandemic. But BS Taqueria, which was on 7th Street, has moved to Vegas and it's still there. You can still experience it. Also, in downtown LA, you can experience Ray's cuisine at Que Barbaro, which is a modern South American concept. So I have Ray on today to talk about what's happening with workers, specifically undocumented workers in the restaurant industry, immigrants in general, but there's a lot of misunderstanding about how restaurants hire and that process and how that works today. So welcome to the show, Ray. Great to have you on.
Thank you, Bill. Good to be here.
All right on. So first off, I normally talk about where I ate, but I thought, I ate at some places that might be relevant for you and I to talk about. So I'm going to keep you in here and we're going to talk about some cool bites I had this week. Did you ever go to Qua?
Yes. Love Qua. Love Daniel Patterson.
Of course you did, right? Yeah, Chef Daniel Patterson. So was that sort of a rite of passage for chefs of your generation to make sure what were the 5 places in America you had to hit?
I think if you were in San Francisco, like at that time, you had to, there was Gary Danko, there was Qua.
Right.
Those are kind of like ones that stood out. Of course, like Napa and the French Laundry. It was just an incredible time to be eating.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do remember at that time it felt like here in Los Angeles that we were really behind. We had more like cool restaurants like Animal that were, taking away the white tablecloth, but we did not have the fine dining of San Francisco at the time. So Chef Daniel Patterson is opening Jaca, and he did a special tasting this week. I got the privilege of attending,
Okay.
and there were definitely hints of Qua. There was like this frozen tomato watermelon gazpacho, granitas. Obviously, that's always what is it with you chefs and granitas?
It's refreshing. We're just messing with your head. Is it dessert? Is it not dessert? What's it supposed to be doing?
Yeah, it's always like a surprise bite. It's a refreshing bite, whether it's at the beginning of the tasting, in the middle, palate cleanser. So that reminded me of what he was doing at Chef Patterson was doing at Qua. And then there was a caviar egg that was poached in smoked oil. That the plating style reminded me of sort of Qua around 2015. And there was this lovely, lovely slow cooked wild salmon with a cucumber dill ice plant. And then there was this popcorn grits plate that was really delicious. But it's definitely a promising start. They haven't even got in their own kitchen yet. So I don't know what it's going to look like when they get in there, what the show is going to be. But are you excited for this restaurant?
Yeah, I'm excited to check it out. I think Chef Daniel and Chef Keith are both incredibly talented. So I want to see what they do with this space. And it's in the old Son of a Gun space, right?
It's in the old Son of a Gun space. So it's a great room to keep going. Yeah, they're co-owners, but I think Chef Daniel is going to be his baby as far as the menu and that sort of thing. Now, what do you think of a chef? Now, I don't know if you remember that. Did you went to Rivera? I'm sure you did.
Oh yeah. Love John.
Yeah.
That was a big reason why we took over, that space is it was continue that storytelling, that legacy. And it already had sort of that warmth, Latin vibe that was serving some really delicious food.
Yeah. And, as you know, Chef John had been out of fine dining for like 15 years or something like that when he opened Rivera. And it was such a great concept. I feel like I think a lot of people at the time thought it was ahead of its time and it went over the head of a lot of diners, but it was successful. It did go, I want to say it lasted like 6 years, but that was really hard I'm most impressed that he was able to come back, do a completely different restaurant and have success. So this is like the question that I have for you is, what do you think after all those years at Qua and being absent from fine dining? What do you think is the challenge for Chef Daniel?
I think that Chef Daniel, even though it's been years since Qua, he's stayed very active within the food community. I know that he's kept his skills sharp. I mean, the level of passion and creativity that somebody like him has, it doesn't go away. It's not like knife skills that become rusty.
Right.
And so just like any chef, when they get back into that kitchen, when they have their team, there's just like an excitement and energy that they feed off of being in the kitchen. And I'm sure Chef Daniel, Chef Patterson is gonna crush it.
Yeah, I have high hopes. I'm looking for Aliens 2 type of sequel, you know.
You never know. Sometimes the sequels are just as good or better than the original.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
And this time we have them closer to home, which is even better for me.
Yes, we don't have to fly into San Francisco, right? We love San Francisco, but it's definitely easier to just drive down the street. The other thing I thought would be fun to talk to you about, I went to this Disciples of the Corn dinner. It was supposed to be in downtown. It was at the La Plaza de Cultura space,
Mm-hmm.
that Gloria Molina kitchen, and they had to move it because there was a curfew. I mean, LA is just fucked right now. I mean, it's whether you're fine dining or if you're a street vendor, you're running for your life. If you're fine dining, you have no staff and no customers, or even mid-level restaurants or casual restaurants. It's all really bad right now. So they had a curfew. So they moved the dinner to Evil Cooks in El Sereno, and which has a really small kitchen. And honestly, what I'm most impressed by is that they pulled off 32 plates in that small space. I did not expect that was going to go well, but it did. These are the next generation of chefs that I think really follow in the footsteps of you, Carlos Salgado, Wes Avila, and Eduardo Ruiz, and other Josh Gill, other chefs of that generation that were pushing modern Mexican American food. Have you been to some of these places? Have you been to Evil Cooks?
Yeah, I've been to Evil Cooks at Smorgasburg, and I actually did a dinner with them together. Invited them out to Que Barbaro, and they came out and did a fantastic collaborative dinner with them.
Oh, that's right. I saw that. I
Yeah,
did see that, and I
yeah.
missed that. And so they did 32 regions, really hard to pull off. And it was Chef Alex, his wife Elvia, did dishes. Crystal, she was at Guerrilla Tacos before it closed, long after Wes Avila left. There's a guy named Chef Enrique at Amor Ami in Burbank. Have you heard of this place?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty new. So I got to check him out. And Francisco Paco from Carnal and Simon, the food truck.
Mhm.
So he was there. Jonathan and Anna from Machin, Fatima from Comal, and also Danielle from Amiga Amore. So it was a cool crew. And it's kind of nice to see that there's a lot of these chefs around, and but besides that, there's places like Ati. I'm seeing lots of this modern Mexican food that's still going in LA. Where I think a few, when you guys were going, that was just a handful of you. Yeah.
Yeah, there were not many. I think we were one of only a handful, and it was really only what I think is the beginning of not just for Mexican food, but ethnic food. Starting to be celebrated, started to be appreciated, and I think from there you start to see more people, whether it's on the high level like John Yao and Cato, kind of really embracing his Taiwanese roots, or at that time Charles Alalia at Rice Bar. We really, I think, was an exciting time for LA, where these chefs, such as myself, were stepping away from the classic, Eurocentric French kitchens, and showing
Yeah.
our voice, showing our culture through food. So it's always exciting to see the continuation of that story. And I, even though I don't get a chance to go out. I know, Bill, you joke that I'm the most maybe first or second most boring chef out there. We won't call out the other guy. I don't.
Well, he calls himself, that guy calls himself the most boring chef.
Okay, well then it's a race to the top, a race to the bottom on that. So I don't get out much, but know that I'm supporting all these guys in spirit.
But you are definitely the coolest boring guy I
I
know.
appreciate that. I'll wear that well. I wear that proudly.
Yeah. Okay. Chef Ray. He might not be out there, driving cars into walls and passing out in the dining room. He's not doing stuff like that. But he's actually he's a really funny guy. Great sense of humor. You just got to get to know him. Give him a chance. Yeah, I agree with you. It is exciting to see sort of this broadening of what is California cuisine and ultimately modern American, right? With it's now Mexican culture and Taiwanese culture and Korean. It's a lot of different types of restaurateurs from different cultures, but Mexican is exploding. I mean, these young people. I'm really looking forward to see what they're going to do, what they're going to add to this story of Mexican American cuisine.
Yeah, I think that was one of the goals of Broken Spanish, and I'll say still remains a goal is to have a restaurant that helps to educate, to train, to inform, not just the guests, but chefs and everyone throughout the restaurant who can continue to use that as a touchstone, use that as a place to continue to grow from for decades. So hope to bring Broken Spanish back and kind of continue to do that as a spot where you can learn Nixtamal. You can learn a lot of these processes that aren't taught in your major fine dining restaurants. There's a handful of places around the country, but given the cultural makeup of this country, there should be more than a dozen places who are who are doing it well, and that's something that I'm always looking to do is establish Broken Spanish as a spot to train it and grow the same way as a Spago has produced this great lineage of chefs who's impacted LA generation after generation.
So, did you just announce breaking news that you're going to bring back Broken Spanish?
I'm gonna leave it there, Bill, and I'm gonna let you. Maybe we'll have a side conversation.
So, okay, right. Uh, now, I definitely feel very close to all of the Alta California chefs. I forgot to name Chef Joseph Centeno, which really he's part of that too. That your generation, because obviously I was following it from the beginning. And is it true I was the very first person ever to try Broken Spanish dishes?
I believe that is true, Bill.
So I was at Fig one night, or you no, I wasn't at Fig one night. You told me to come down, and you wanted to try out some dishes on me.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. The one thing I do remember was a flour tortilla with butter and a shit ton of truffles,
Yes. Yes. It was. It was. Yeah.
which might be one of the better burritos I've ever had. I mean, that was kind of an amazing.
It was a take on something my father loved to eat, still does love to eat, is just a flour tortilla slathered with butter, which is tasty.
Yeah, we all
Tortilla
love that.
butter and salt. And so
Yeah.
I looked to my left and I said, okay, well we have salt, and to the right I got some truffle. So let's see how that worked. And sure enough, it was pretty tasty.
It was spontaneous. So that was a spontaneous dish.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we do is just sort of spontaneous, kind of in the
Yeah.
moment, getting inspiration either from what's around us or what's in our past.
Yeah. So I got that preview there, and then you opened Broken Spanish. But even before, I'm sure I was around and got in on some early tastings. Even for me, it's one of those things where loved the idea about of Broken Spanish, of Chicano food presented in a fine dining context. But it was maybe about the third year, and I remember the time. I almost remember the evening I was there. I mean, I couldn't name the date, but I sort of visualize it, that I'm like, oh my God, this place finally came together. Like it really is. It's such a thoughtful, well conceived concept at this point, and it was really mature. By around the third year, and I just thought, oh my God, this is amazing. And after that, anytime I brought somebody, how sometimes you bring somebody to a place and they don't get it. But like everybody I was bringing there was just like, oh my God, this place is popping. And Broken Spanish really became part of one of those restaurants you had to try in LA that was so LA.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that was like for me, the accolades are all subjective, and rankings, ratings, who knows? It all depends on who's putting together that list, And what I was looking for is like, look, I want Broken Spanish to be, and I think we all have this, especially as chefs. It's like when you go into a city, whether it's Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Austin. It's like, okay, where is it that you have to eat? So if somebody says, I'm coming to LA,
Yeah.
what are the 5 places you have to try? And I've always wanted, my gauge of success is when people would put Broken Spanish on that list of places to be. You're in LA for only 24 hours. You have to try Broken Spanish, or you're there for a week, you have to try Broken Spanish. And that was really the
Yeah.
the goal, is to be people's favorite favorite place to go to, and bring out of town guests. And we got that a lot. A lot of chefs, a lot of people in the business would bring their out of town guests to Broken Spanish to try it.
Yeah, I feel like the best restaurants in Los Angeles always wear LA on their sleeve, and I think, and the cultures of Los Angeles. So that's Cato right now. Cato represents that. The main reason I brought you on here today was to talk about what's happening out there. But first, a reminder that Taqueando is powered by the Acquired Taste Media Network. Be sure to listen to our sister podcast, the LA Food Podcast. This week, Luca is sitting down with LA Times food critic Bill Addison to talk about his latest list of the 101 best restaurants in California. That drops this Friday. Be sure to catch it wherever you listen to podcasts. And now, without further ado, vamos a taquear. You've been a chef for 31 years. You've been in a lot of kitchens. What was your first kitchen?
I actually started in the front of the house, and I started off at Chewy's Mexican restaurant in Glendale in 1994.
Hey.
Bussing, putting chips and salsa on people's tables, and washing dishes.
Yeah, picking up a lot of beans and rice.
Oh, all day long, Bill.
Yeah, and so you've been in kitchens, and you're aware of what's happening in how hiring occurs. And a lot of people think, well, how come restaurants don't just hire documented people? And there's this sort of illusion, or this. I just don't think people care to look into it. They just say these things, and they get mad at restaurants. And the other day I've seen several videos of all these videos that are going around about ICE agents, and these guys saying, well, you're hiring illegal people, you're hiring undocumented people. They're taking people away. But like, a lot of people don't understand how that system works. Now, in your generation, the first thing I want to talk about is the dishwasher, because
Mhm.
also a lot of people don't appreciate that this is not a job that anyone could walk into. You can't just walk up off the street and never have done dishes at a restaurant. You can't have washed dishes in your home and wash dishes in a restaurant. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, the two skills do
Right.
not translate. Yeah.
No, they don't, right? And that's what I feel like everybody has that attitude, like, well, it's just dishwashing. But now in your generation, and also the generation before you, almost all chefs, white, black, Latino, Asian, if you went into a restaurant kitchen, you almost always started in as a dishwasher.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was the starting place for so many people. And even if I look at my roster of chefs throughout the restaurants, a lot of the people who ended up being my sous chefs, banquet chef, chef cuisine, executive sous, a good portion of them passed through the dish pit. And it's one of those things where you almost want to hire people who have had that experience, because you know that they're it's not for the faint of heart. You know that
Right.
they can get through it. That they have a certain amount of grit, of organization, of drive, of skill, and they can put up with a lot.
It's also a high pressure position. I mean, there's a lot of pressure in that room.
100%.
I mean, if the people don't understand this either, I mean, if the dishes go down,
Oh, the whole restaurant goes down, and it's,
right?
whether it's a spoon that you can't get for your dessert, or waiting for the glasses to cool down because they're still coming out of the dish machine, or whatever it is. If you don't have that part of the restaurant working, then you don't have any part of the restaurant working.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people's bad dining experiences where they complain about the service of the restaurant, that night it could have been there where it all went wrong.
Hmm.
You know, and so like, I remember hearing Chef Anthony Bourdain talk about it. Like, he started as a dishwasher. It seems like such an old school path. It used to be a path to become a chef. Now, here we are in 2025. And when you have the chefs that are not Latino, okay, I'm not just going to say just white chefs because there's a lot of other chefs too, but the chefs that are not Latino that come into your kitchen, they've gone to culinary school or they've gotten some experience. Are they asking to start as a dishwasher?
No, I think that people are not looking at that as their reality. I think they feel like they've kind of bought their way out of that spot, by going to culinary school or getting some sort of degree. And I think in their mind, it makes them exempt. But the reality is going through positions like that are what prove that you can do it. Prove that you are a hard worker. And in a kitchen, you, especially previously, even now, you have to prove yourself. And I think that people who come in and just want to be a sous chef and want to do a crazy tasting, they just set themselves up for failure,
Right.
because they look like a jackass, instead of somebody who starts in a position like a well needed prep cook or dishwasher or butchery, and learns those skills, and makes themselves invaluable to the kitchen and to the crew. And that's how you become a leader, not by a culinary degree or a resume that says you've staged at 15 different Michelin star restaurants for 2 weeks.
Right. And you didn't even cook while you were there.
And you didn't even cook. Yeah,
Right. And
exactly.
so
You probably wash dishes.
you you probably wash dishes, the only dishes that you're ever going to wash. And so this is part of it, right? People don't understand that these positions aren't being taken by people that are on the chef track, right? And so, but it's not just dishwasher. There's other restaurant positions that don't have the glamour that people want to skip over. And now I see it all the time. I see it on Instagram. I see it, people posting about it that we're hiring, like they put out their post. And so when a restaurant is opening, they need to get those positions filled. You can't open your restaurant until you staff it. And you are hiring the people that walk in the door. And again, what a lot of people don't know is that there is a paperwork requirement, but those documents can be falsified.
Mhm.
And so most restaurants that are just looking to get that position, and if somebody has the paperwork, they come in. There's all kinds of things going on because I know that we talked about it in one of the episodes about the restaurant Buona Forchetta in San Diego. They were raided. So the ICE agents took restaurant workers. So we don't know what the situation was in the restaurant, but obviously we know that the restaurant had undocumented people. Now they could have they could have accessed that through tax information because there is a system that tracks the pay stubs, the taxes that are paid by undocumented people. And there's also maybe documents or things that are going on. But obviously, this is happening widespread. Would you say that this is a widespread industry reality that there are lots of undocumented workers in restaurant kitchens?
Yeah, I mean, I would even zoom out and just say that the food industry in the U.S. and especially California, at large, relies heavily on undocumented workers. And look, that's not a theory. That's not a political statement. It's just a simple fact of how the system
Yeah.
operates. So whether we're talking about farms, whether we're talking about the harvesting and packaging, processing, delivery, when it arrives to your door from the farm to the fryer, there's so many hands that have touched that. Almost exclusively, migrant hands, and many of which are undocumented. So, absolutely, it is the backbone of the food service industry.
Right. So we know that it's in farm workers, and again, that's another skilled position that farmers, the people that are doing that work, see that as a path, an entry level job for them, where most other Americans, I mean, look at me as a Mexican American. Um, I worked on a farm one day. I used to mow lawns like a good Mexicano. That was my high school job. While all kids were working at Jack in a Box and Burger King, I was mowing lawns. I had my own little business, and one of the guys liked my work, and he asked me to come work on his orchard. And I did it for one day, and it wasn't. I was in sports. I was healthy. I was strong. I was young, but it wasn't the work itself that bothered me, that I couldn't do it, because this is a really horribly racist thing to say, that Mexicans are built for this, because we're not. It's really hard work, but there's no incentive. There was no incentive for me to do it. Like, I said, okay, why am I doing this? I'm not going to do this in my future. This doesn't get me, even as a 14-year-old, I could see that there's no path through farming that gets me somewhere. As a kid who was studying music, getting good grades, doing sports, had a different life planned. I was going to go to college, so I just didn't see it I didn't see the point of doing it, and I got really bored and disinterested in it after like a day, and it did kick my ass, and I did feel that at home, but I didn't want to go back. I was like, I just like, no, I'm not going back. I'm not doing that again. But for people that are coming here, they see it as a path to saving up money, opening a business, and maybe they're gonna open their own food truck, or they're gonna sell food in the street, or they're gonna open some other kind of business. So there's really an incentive, and it makes sense for them. It's a step towards something greater. Same thing as a dishwasher, but besides the farm workers, which the majority are undocumented, you're saying it's also the person who drives that produce into Los Angeles is also probably an undocumented worker.
Yeah, I think the delivery driver. I mean, you had mentioned about who's lining up for these jobs, and it's for the most part, it's not citizen workers who are want to go and process 1,000 chickens in a day. They're not harvesting the vines in central and northern California that's going to make the wine. It's people who are looking at this as an opportunity. Looking at it as their future, not even for themselves, but for generations to come. I think the same is true
Yeah.
of my family, who now has four generations here in the U.S. And we've worked the fields, we've worked the factories, clean the houses, done all of these things. Myself growing up, I spent summers with my grandfather doing manual labor and working in a ditch in a construction site, tying rebar, and learning the value of that. And like you said, I knew that wasn't my future, and it wasn't the future that they wanted for me. But I could see that they were doing it so that I could have a better future. And I think that that's really what people are working so hard for these days as well. Whether it's driving all night into the middle of the night to deliver the produce, whether it's sweating away in the in the dish pit. Yeah, they might be good at it, they might be efficient at it, but I think they're looking for a bigger goal that goes beyond them, and they're looking to the generations forward to set them up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm one generation away from tomatoes, tomato picking, one. And so I'm a little older than you. My grandfather was hauled tomatoes. He was he was a union truck driver, and he drove to Bakersfield every morning and picked up stuff and dropped stuff off and came back to Stockton, California. And my grandmother worked in the cannery until she started to have health problems, but she was sorting tomatoes. My cousins were in the field picking. My dad was undocumented. He came across the border when he was one, and just he back then you could get a driver's license and Social Security. There wasn't that big of an issue, and he managed to live all his life because he didn't really travel internationally, so he never had to worry about. He never flew anywhere, so he didn't have to worry about it, and he lived until his death here in the United States, undocumented. But my parents also did not want me to go into the tomato picking business, and going to a high school, going through school as I did, and going to a university to study music. You know, my, my path was very different from my grandparents and my father's, and I think that's very American, right? That you want your kids to do better. You don't want them to you don't want them to have the same struggles, and that makes sense. And so yeah, people aren't lazy because they don't want to wash dishes. It's their path is just different now. It changes with each generation.
Yeah, I think you do the best that you can. You do what with what you have access to. And I think whether they knew it or not, whether this was their goal or their end game, my parents, my grandparents, great grandparents, everyone was working towards creating better access for me, so that I could be the first in my family's history to go to college, to own my own business, to hit all these dreams that I think that they originally maybe didn't even have for themselves, but had when they decided to move to this country for opportunity.
Yeah, and it's right. And so again, we have undocumented workers that are because no one's giving them visas. We could give them visas,
Mm-hmm.
but no one is doing that. And these farms right now, there's a lot of farms that have been shut down recently because of raids. Construction sites shut down. I have one vendor who it's horrible. I mean, he had to close his restaurant down. He's a street vendor. And then he's like, okay, I have no other work. So he went to go do his other job, which is construction. And he showed up to the site and he sent me a video, and he was the only one on the job. Like no one else was there. He had a 5-man crew working on a house, and they didn't show up that day because they're afraid they're going to get grabbed. And so, I mean, that's the other part of it, is that restaurants don't get built without undocumented workers. So there's also the construction and maintenance aspects of restaurants that also, would you say that also relies on undocumented labor?
Yeah, I think if you look at a lot of restaurants, it's like, okay, who when everyone's clocked out, like who's cleaning your kitchen, who's cleaning the hoods, who is it that's coming in and taking out the trash, who's going through the trash and getting the recycling out. It's not me. It's
Yeah.
somebody else who needs that job. And it's 100%, just being, it's not something that we're getting a line out the door of people who are asking for those positions. They're hard, they're thankless, they're grueling. They, a lot of times, I don't know how other companies do it, but a lot of these positions, they don't pay well.
Yeah.
And to your point, people are looking for a better opportunity, a better day.
Right. I mean, a lot of the undocumented workers that I've met over the years in the restaurant industry want hours. So they will do it by hours. So like you said, if you they're the first ones at the restaurant and they're the last ones to leave. And so they're going to get their hours in to do all these things. And then a lot of them are going to go to another job. They're working several jobs. I know undocumented workers that will work 3 restaurants, and which one do they like the most? The one that gives them the most hours. I mean, that's not all cases, but yeah, it's all these positions that really keep the restaurant, help the restaurant open, help the restaurant be supplied. They're closing restaurants, and really, it's this paradox right now where there's a certain part of the population complaining about, well, what are we going to do about this problem? But they're also going into restaurants and they're getting sticker shock. They're going like, how come this food is so expensive? You know?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where I think as a whole, the people just put their heads in the sand, and they don't want to they don't want to know they just the invisible people are making our food, are cleaning are cleaning our homes, are watching our kids. We don't want to know their status. And when you look at the food system, we're in a country where people they don't want to know how the sausage is made, but they want to have it for breakfast every morning.
Yeah. And they want it cheap.
Yeah, and they want it cheap. And that's the reality I think that we're in. And I think that there's the idea that I think you kind of touched upon it, that okay, these people are the undocumented are taking our jobs, and that's not the case. I don't know anybody who intentionally hires for putting up a premium on, oh, you're undocumented, here you go to the top of the front of the line. They're the only people in the line looking to do some of these thankless jobs.
Yeah, I mean that's another discussion, right? And this really ignorant phrase, taking our jobs, which is old American nativism that goes back to the founding of this country. It was every group that came in was accused of this: Irish, Italians, Chinese, and today it's Mexican. Well, people say generically Mexicans, but they're also talking about Central Americans. Like the two groups that show up to kitchens that work are Central Americans, specifically. I want to say Guatemala, El Salvador, also other Central American countries, but Mexicans and a lot of indigenous people. A lot of chefs don't know how many indigenous workers they have in their kitchens, but these are people that speak indigenous language as their first language. It's not people are taking our jobs. People have moved on from those jobs. We don't do those jobs anymore, and why? I'm sure there's studies out there to talk about this, but the truth is, there are, as we move from generation to generation and people want to do better, they want their kids to do something better than what they did, they sort of push them away from these jobs. There's a lot of things that people did 100 years ago that they're just not doing anymore. I mean, even from my generation, do your kids have paper routes?
No, there's no paper routes.
Paper routes. Okay.
Yeah,
So
there's not papers. Well, it's a guy in a van who throws out
exactly.
a newspaper at me. Yeah.
But before there were no paper, well, there still are papers delivered, in some parts like newsstands in New York and stuff. But even undocumented people are doing that. Like I remember there, we had paper boys when I was a kid. I was a paper boy, and so that's a job that not only was taken over by undocumented people, and then it just disappeared. So it's like there is no such thing as taking jobs. You should be taking jobs that you're things that you're going to school for, things that you're studying, the advancement that's always going to happen. There's always going to be a forward motion. And that means some of these jobs that are left behind, we don't have a way in restaurants to wash dishes with a machine. We don't, not during service the way you need.
No, not that I found out. But I mean, I feel like it's more people's jobs are being taken by technology and innovation and advancement in that field than there are somebody, like nobody's taking a shovel out of somebody else's hand who wanted to dig a hole,
Yeah.
or taking a sprayer out of someone's hand who's dying to wash dishes.
Right. It's a stupid fucking conversation because we are like
We've advanced as a society. We've
we've
modernized.
advanced.
It's like people now
People are taking jobs.
deliver
Yeah.
groceries. It's like I
Right.
never thought that someone would shop for me at the grocery store and then drop it at my door. But
Right.
here we are.
Right. And so, right, we're in this cycle of where we're not having the real conversation. It's, people are taking our jobs, and then people like me on the left were saying, well, come and get these jobs. Why aren't you doing them? And that's also like, it's just a reaction to that. But the truth is, why don't we just look at what is happening? And we have undocumented people filling these positions, and we just need to make sure that they're not kidnapped. I mean, be even better, give them the visas. Is there a visa available for a restaurant dishwasher?
No, not that I am not an immigration specialist, but I do not I don't know that that's the case. No, but I think to your point, I think that there has to be, you have to acknowledge that the role that undocumented workers play in our food system, which I think we haven't as a large, and look at maybe providing a path forward to or their legal status to long-term contributors in food and agriculture and hospitality. I mean, it's part of what this system relies on, and not to take the human element out of it, but just looking at beyond that is the economic impact of it. A state like California with $100 billion agriculture business. Like, what happens when you take 60%, 70% of the workers off the field? We thought that COVID was bad with shortages of not having
Yeah.
people to pick, or imagine all the crops that are going to go bad. What's going to happen to the prices of everything? I mean, it's also very simple economics with supply shortages, and the prices are going to go up. It's just, I think that people aren't looking at many sides of it. I think they're approaching it with fear. I think they're approaching it with hate. I think they're approaching it with bias. And they're trying to dehumanize the people who are out there, and whether it's with the thought that they're taking our jobs, or they're draining the resources of that should be going to American citizens. I mean, you look at undocumented people, even just in California, they pay over $9 billion in taxes. Much of that they're not gonna see back. Yes, they can go to our public schools, but are they going to get Medicare? Are they going to get Social Security? No, they're helping to subsidize. So I think that you have to look at all of these, the positive impacts of immigration and undocumented workers, and say, look, let's do something that makes sense. Does kidnapping make sense? I don't think so. Does this culture of psychological, strategic psychological torture that's designed to deter future immigrants who are coming from this country? Like, that's not going to work. That's not a good long-term strategy from a human rights standpoint. And also, what's going to happen if these people who want that are actually successful? If there really aren't any undocumented people in this country, what happens to it? It just kind of, the system collapses.
Yeah. I mean, definitely there's no country out there that wants to put on a tourism brochure that come to Los Angeles and be abducted by masked men. I mean, I want to say right now that, as a chef, you've gone through the pandemic. You lost a restaurant because of the pandemic. Um, and now wildfires where everybody was, kind of still dealing with the whiplash of the pandemic, and the fires slowed down your business. Did you lose business after the fires?
Oh yeah. I mean, since 2015, it's been, or sorry, 2020, it's been it's been pandemic, it's been strikes, it's been wildfires, it's been it's been so much that so many restaurants have had to go through, and this is just the latest of this last decade of trying to battle through.
So right now, in addition to the street food vendors have disappeared from our streets, and the ones that remain are basically taking a huge risk of being abducted. Restaurants have a worker shortage right now because undocumented people are having to stay home, and customers aren't going out because of curfews in downtown LA. They're avoiding neighborhoods because there's armed people running around. You could get caught in a traffic jam if you go to Pico Rivera behind a convoy of bandits, And so do you feel like this might be the biggest challenge to the restaurant industry that LA has ever experienced?
It has potential to be. I mean, I think it's one of those things where you're not going to experience, you're not going to see it today, maybe or tomorrow, but when you start seeing crops that weren't picked, like the production, slows down, when people can't or don't show up to work, when guests, for whatever reason, aren't coming into the restaurants, it's going to be really bad, and it's going to be, I would say, sort of like it has potential for that COVID level set of experience, and and potentially worse. It all depends on whether or not we can get a handle on it, and understand that, look, we have this group of people who are not just plugging holes in this industry, but they're
Yeah.
sort of the load bearing wall of it, and you can't just pull it out and expect for it to stand. It's not going to work.
Right. I mean, so that's the other part of it is, yes, I've been seeing these stories about farmers that have had to plow over their fields because they're not going to get pickers this season. Farms that have shut down that we don't even know about. So it is frustrating. Well, I'm going to say it's frustrating that we're not seeing it, because when it comes, it's going to, I think you're right. It's going to be very bad when all this catches up. There's so much activity right now. There's so much violence and chaos happening in Los Angeles, but we don't really see what's coming in terms of shortages and the costs that are going to, even the costs, they're slowly going up. Grocery costs are slowly going up and down, but we haven't felt the massive damage that's going to come out of all of this.
And look, I especially as an operator myself, I hope that that's not the case. Every day I wake up and I'm excited to do this, and there's no other job or career I'd rather do than to run restaurants, not just for myself but for everyone who shows up with me, whether on the service team or the culinary side, and we're gonna continue to fight. But I'm saying I would not be surprised to see service slowdowns and price spikes and increased closures, and just all of these things that looking at it objectively, we're setting ourselves up for, if we continue to kind of pull on this thread that is holding the food system together.
Yeah, I think also we're going to see a rapid string of closures. I know AOC just announced it's closing,
Mm-hmm.
and they did not comment on the current situation, but they were listing a bunch of factors. But certainly everyone, I don't know anyone who isn't slowing down right now. And a lot of, these days too, people are kind of quiet about when things are going bad. They're not letting us know. They just sort of walking away and we're finding out later, or they're making a quick announcement, bye, we're done. And the pressures that have been mounting on Los Angeles are certainly tremendous. Now,
And even for guests, even for diners, a lot of people, they don't feel like, okay, this is a time to celebrate. This is the time to go out and throw a party, buy out the restaurants, celebrate a a partnership or whatever it is. And I understand that as a human, I have similar feelings some days, but it is the time to go out and support when you can, how you can. But I understand how that may not feel right.
Yeah. Well, I know, I'm looking forward to Broken Spanish, and let's talk about that. Exclusive to
Yeah.
me. Um, I know you're going to keep going, and you've been here 31 years. The restaurant industry is always a challenge. It is very strange to see the government decide to declare war on. I mean, they're besides declaring war on immigrants, specifically on undocumented immigrants, and our communities, they're also waging an economic war against Los Angeles businesses and service industry so big here. So it's a war on restaurants as well. It's nothing compared to being kidnapped or having your family separated, but it is a reality as we move forward. I mean, certainly the vendors that are still out there, they're in such a perilous position, and a lot of people are doing all kinds of things they can to help. Some documented younger members of family are stepping in. People are buying them out. There's all kinds of things going on, but it's just band-aids after band-aids after band-aids that it's not sustainable. I don't know that I've ever seen in the United States a government just wage war on a city. The federal government.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy. Yeah, it's nuts.
But we don't have a system to replace the system that exists at this point. And this has been your entire career. Would you say that the entire 31 years you've been, this has not changed?
No, I mean, I think maybe it's at a head now, politically, economically. Everything is it's very it's very tense. It feels like you know kind of like a zero sum game here. But I think that we like you said, we have to look at the policy. We have to have something that aligns with what is actually happening out there, because right now we have all of these workers that in times of need, again, like COVID and during the pandemic, we were labeled as essential workers. But now those same people are being criminalized for existing, for doing the same thing that we asked them to do, to show up day in and day out, lay their health on the line and the health of others to go and feed their family. And now they're trying to do it, and we're swooping them up, taking them away.
Yeah, it's really tough. So I mean, I know you. I mean, we are from that community, even though you and I are safe, and we're much safer than people without documentation. But it's heartbreaking too. There's an emotional toll that the restaurants are taking because some restaurants have built family. You guys built families, and you get to know each other, you get to know each other's families, and then now one of your workers you don't ever hear from again. So there's also an emotional toll. And I know that's hard, but we're gonna keep going, and we want people to go to restaurants. We want people to support street vendors right now. Do anything you can. I think more than ever, it's the Mexican, Central American, indigenous communities in Los Angeles that need your support, and they are in restaurants. They are in Chef Ray's restaurants. So go see him at Astrid, and go to Que Barbaro. And if you're in Vegas, you got to hit Viva and Bias Taqueria, and hopefully we're going to get that over here. Just keep supporting the community. I know people out there are saying, I don't know what to do right now. If I should be going out to dinner, yes, absolutely, you should be going out to dinner to continue to keep this valuable industry that relies on undocumented workers, but also undocumented workers are the biggest part of all of it.
Hmm. Agreed.
Okay, thank you, Chef Ray. We're gonna come on when this is all over, and talk about, how we survive this and some other cool things. Maybe the broken Spanish preview.
Maybe.
So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me, Bill. It's been great. Stay safe.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Taqueando podcast this week. And be sure to tune in next week for another episode. And please leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to your podcasts.